If you need just a little bit more storage in your house, today I'm going to show you how to build something just a little bit different than normal. This is a great little project because it's easy to build and it doesn't use very much material. Today's project begins with a 1x10, and I'm starting by cutting one piece at 48 inches long. Alright, so now what I'll do is I'll draw lines every 1 foot across the width of the board. And on each of these lines, I'll make a mark 2 inches from each side. Then on each of these marks, I'll draw one line diagonal through each segment. Let's mark out these lines on these thin segments, that way we don't accidentally cut those out here in a minute. Now we're ready to cut this out into 2 sides for our shelf. Next, on the bottom of all these wide parts, let's make a mark 5¼ inches over on the bottom. And on the angled part, let's make a mark 1½ inches up from that corner. Then we'll simply draw a line between those 2 marks. Once that's done, I'll go ahead and cut these lines. And as you can see, with a little bit of sanding, these both match perfectly. And since we're in the sanding mood, I'm going to go ahead and sand these the rest of the way down and get rid of those pencil marks too.
Oh dude, this kind of looks like a Christmas tree. Look at that.
Now I'm going to cut 4 1x6s at 22½ inches long, and that's going to make my shelf 24 inches wide. If you want a shelf that's a little bit wider than that, just adjust these measurements a little bit. Alright, so now I'll just attach these with wood glue and finishing nails at the bottom of each of those wide segments. And if we take a closer look at the sides, you'll see the bottom edge of these boards is flush with those notches. Now let's take our table saw and set the blade 2 7/8 inches from the fence. Then I'll go ahead and tilt the blade at a 30-degree angle. Let's run a 1x4 through this thing. Now let's cut this up into 4 22½ inch pieces. Why drop the mic when you can throw the lumber instead? Here's a look at these 4 completed pieces. You'll see why we did this here in just a second. Now let's attach all these to the front of each shelf. Let's go ahead and sand these a little bit to make them look like one solid piece. I've got just enough 1x4 left over. Let's cut one more piece to 22½ inches long. I think what I'll do here is I'll cut this flush with the front of those angled sides, and I'll use the table saw to do that. Let's go ahead and throw this guy on at the top. Now the easiest way to cover up this back would have been to cut one solid piece of 1/4 inch plywood and nail it on the back. But for some reason, I have a bunch of these little strips of 1/4 inch plywood that are 6 inches wide laying around. So let's try something and see how it turns out. Now I'll attach these to the back using wood glue and staples. And after assembling this back, I wish I would have just used one solid piece on it. Getting the spacing right on the back was kind of weird. Alright, here's a look at this little guy before I go to finish it, and I think I'm going to whitewash this thing. And to do that, basically what I'll do is I'll take a water-based white paint and I'll mix it half and half with water. And now, this thing's ready to store all kinds of junk in your house. And as you may have noticed from the video, I use very little materials to make this thing. And because of that, this is a great project if you're on a budget and you need just a little bit more storage. I hope you enjoyed today's video. Please hit that like button if you did before you watch this one right here.